Hey everybody, welcome to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Langford. The point of this show is to help improve ourselves as dogmen and to raise the quality of the dogs on the end of our lead. So let's settle in, turn the volume up, and let's see if we can't learn a trick or two together from our guests. Guess we'll just jump on here and get started.
Get after it.
Hey everybody, you are listening to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Langford, and today I'm sitting down here with my buddy, Vic Hurley. How are you today, Vic?
I'm good, Colby.
Yeah. I guess I've got a little bit of history with Vic and the fact that he's known my parents about forever, I think.
Yeah, we went to school together.
Yeah, I think your dad was my dad's boss, too.
Yeah. We've had a lot of family relations, through the years.
So I'll just jump right into it. Vic, tell us about how you got started hunting dogs.
My dad started me when I was probably 4 or 5 years old when I got started hunting. We had an old dogs, wasn't all that good at dogs. Then when I was probably 6 or 7, he got a really good dog, and it intrigued me. It made me want to go hunting, and that's how I got started, just through my dad. My dad wasn't much of a summer hunter at all. He was more of a winter hunter, and back then that's mostly what everybody did.
What? Tell me about the dogs back then. What?
All grade dogs back then. If you had a good dog, neighbor had a pretty good dog. Didn't matter if it was a blue tick. All those dogs was crossed up.
Yeah.
And that's all we hunted. And it was good. It was really good back then, for the times. Dogs totally different than from today.
Yeah.
Totally different.
So what are some of the biggest things you've seen over the years change with this sport?
The dogs.
Yeah.
The dogs have changed. Dogs today are so much smarter than they was back then. When we made a cross back then, we was really lucky if we had a pup a year and a half old that was starting to tree. Now, I don't mean treeing coons by itself. I'm talking starting. And back then, you walk hunted everything. And that was something that I seen early on that I did not like to do. I didn't want to have to walk that dog to go find a coon. And then throughout the years, House's Tom, House's Lipper, some of those dogs was the first ones to show up in this country, and those dogs would go hunting. And at that time, I wouldn't hunt a walker dog. I just would not hunt a walker dog. Back then, all they done was run deer and coyotes. Well, then we've kind of progressed up through the dogs that kind of started treeing, but then I liked the English dogs. They was more laid back, and I had an awful good dog years back called Flip that everybody around here knew Flip. And he was the type of dog that would go hunting way before his time. I mean, he was more of a modern day dog 20 years before he should have been. And that's what I seen that I'm sure we'll talk about competition hunting, but that's what got me into competition hunting was I seen that dog. He wasn't just a hide dog. He was a dog that floated through the country and treed coons, but you didn't walk to many slick trees with that dog. He had coons going to be by himself most of the time. He would run a track with other dogs when you dumped him out. He'd take them tracks away from them dogs and go tree them coons, and if they was tied up, on a track, this dog could just explode, and he done things different. He got me to thinking, and then years back, we went and me, Earl Burleson, Carl Hurley, and Kevin Hurley, my cousins, we all go to northern Missouri, and we got into them coons up there, and we would hunt around here, and you could tree 2-3 coon a night, or if you had a pretty good dog here. Coons wasn't just as plentiful as they are today. And we went to northern Missouri, and when I seen what my dog could do in northern Missouri versus what he could do here, it got me to thinking that I might ought to put this dog in some hunts because, you could travel around. I didn't have to just stay right here, and that's what got me started into it. I was probably 20 when I started into that, and it just kind of progressed from there. But then we got into walker dogs. Those dogs they could have been bred like anything because DNA wasn't no thing around then. They could have been whatever. But there was some dogs surfacing that would do things as good as Flip could, and I thought he was before his time. Those dogs could do things that he was the only one I could see doing that. And then they started breeding English dogs different than what I wanted them bred. So, I was probably in my 40s, maybe late 40s, early 50s, when I switched over to walker dogs. And that's when DNA come out. That was a nightmare when that first came out because Colby, back then you could go to a trade days and there wasn't even a dog there. You could buy a set of papers. I mean, that's how bad it was. I mean, it was horrible. Well, DNA come along, it stopped all that. Well, then you started seeing those dogs that was truly, purebred dogs, and that was in the 90s, and it changed everything. It changed the whole dynamic of the hound deal, and it was good. It was really good that happened. And now you go pick up a set of papers today, and you know what you're getting. You can make those crosses. And it's made a big difference. You can kind of get what you want.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know that with the cur dog and squirrel dog world, kind of some people say, oh, well, what'll papers tree? But the way I look at it is, if you have a dog that's falsely papered, and you're trying to line breed or make crosses, it's really hard to replicate without knowing what you have in the first place.
You really can't do it because you don't know where you're at. Mm-hmm. You don't know what you're doing. And it's a good deal. I love the cur dog deal. I think it's got its place. I think it's a good deal. I don't know. This thing has really changed throughout the years. It is so much different than what it was, Rules in the hunts made a huge difference.
So I'm not super familiar with how the rules have changed over the years.
Well, when we first started hunting, there wasn't a whole lot of rules. There's bylaws that, we was all hunting grade dogs back in the day. Go to Anderson, Missouri, and be 30 dogs show up at a hunt. Not a lot of rules. This kind of those clubs made up their own deal. Then it got started. Then UKC got onto the scene.
So were those like kill hunts?
No, they wasn't. Now, Seneca even still has to this day a once a year hunt that we all put on, and it's a fun hunt. I kind of hate to see it because we do kill too many coons during that time. Mm-hmm. But you go down there and there'll be a pile of 100 coons in there, and that gets killed on that night. But they do need thinned out at times. But the rules today, most of the rules today, if everybody in the cast understands the rules, there's not that many bad casts. There was some bad casts back then because the rules wasn't in play. And you could, if you was tough enough back then and stand there long enough, you could prove your point. But now the rules are there. They're in play. We went from carbide lights to thermals. Mm-hmm. That's a big difference. That's, when I started hunting, it was a carbide light. Now I got a thermal and a 300i Garmin. It's different. And look what the Garmin done to our dogs. Garmin don't get no credit, but when they first started putting that on a screen, you could watch how that dog moved. look what that done for us. I mean, we used to have dogs that I guarantee we turned them loose. Half of those dogs might have been 100 yards from us for 30 minutes, not doing nothing, all that downtime. And then they'd venture off 400 yards, tree a coon. You thought, hey,
He just been out hunting the whole time.
Old Rover made a big deal there, but really he didn't go nowhere. Well, when we started the Garmin deal, we started seeing those lines on there. It changed these dogs, and it did it in your world, in the cur dogs. It did it in my world, in all the hounds. It did it in everything. It changed a lot.
Yeah.
And here we are today. Who knows what's next? I don't know. Maybe we'll have cameras on these things. We don't have to walk to a tree one day, but I don't know. But
just send in the drone.
Yeah, send in the drone and see what he's got and move him out of there. I don't know. Maybe we do that, but I don't know. It's good though. I mean, look where it's all came from.
Yeah.
I love this sport. I still raise pups. I'm still that guy that wants to see what the breeding program's done. Look what Cheyenne Cummins right here in our neck of the woods has done as far as the breeding program. Look what Lane Denny. Lane's, these guys are winning and there's work to that. There's a lot of work to that, I don't know. It's changed. The whole thing's changed. But the main thing is our dogs are so much smarter today. I'm sure you see that in the cur dogs. I mean, so much smarter.
What do you think about social media? Do you think it's changed the game much?
Yeah. I mean, look at, when I was a kid, you went to a grade hunt. Now, with all the social media and everything, you can leave here and go to a $100,000 hunt right here in our county. They have a hunt that's a $10,000 entry fee hunt right here 3 miles from my house. Win $100,000 in one night. You went from winning a trophy. I got several of them back there, old ones, and you go from winning a trophy to nowadays you can win $100,000 in one night. Social media has caused a lot of that.
Yeah, that and kind of I feel like being able to see what else is out there without knowing about a dog that's across the country that you wouldn't known about unless you went hunting hardly, unless you saw it in a magazine.
Right. How you going to know about a dog in Pennsylvania sitting here in Oklahoma, I mean, and it's changed that whole – the dynamic of it is it's all changed. And for the better, for the most part, it's for the better.
Yeah. What is – you say for the most part, what do you miss about the way it was?
The old-time breeders, it was kind of a close-knit deal. You didn't get out of your neck of the woods, I mean, you stayed around pretty close to where you was at, and you miss, having to go down and hunt with that guy. If you wanted to, I remember when TrackMan come on the scene, and I heard all these things about TrackMan, and I think TrackMan done his part as far as what he should have done as a stud dog. But if you really wanted to see what TrackMan did, you had to drive to Kurt Ehring's house in Monroe City to hunt with him, because I mean, it just nowadays you can go out here and get on the internet. You can watch hunts from TrackMan from 20 years ago, when he was in his prime, and it changed. I miss that. I miss the part of it. It's almost too easy at times to do what we can. You got a top female right now. You don't have to go nowhere. You can ship semen. But you don't never get to meet that guy and know. I miss that, but I'm getting older, so, but I do miss that.
Yeah. So what's the favorite dog you've ever had, Vic?
Probably my favorite dog was a dog called Hank. He was, believe it or not, he was a red-boned dog. Maybe now I look back at it, Hank probably made more mistakes than I thought he did, but he was the dog. I was 14, 15 years old, hides were worth $40, $50. I could take Hank at a 15-year-old kid. My dad, I didn't have driver's license, but my dad would let me use this H Farmall tractor we had, and I had an old pickup bed trailer, and Dad would let me drive that tractor around. And when I'd take Hank hunting, it wasn't nothing to go make $75 or $100 a night. Now, that was something for, back then. Mm-hmm. In the 70s, that was something. Early 80s, that you just didn't hear that. All of my buddies was making $80 to $100 a week, and I was making $80 to $100 a night. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of difference, and we done it through coon hunting. And then that deal didn't last forever. The hide deal. Well, then I had to join that workforce. But Hank was the dog that I thought was probably the dog that would stand out the most in my mind. I owned him all the time. He was, from a yearling pup when my dad bought him until we buried him. He was that kind of a dog. But really, really good dog for the times. Made me a lot of money.
What would a good dog sell for back then?
Oh, you could buy the top hound in the country for $200. One that would cost, there's no telling what one would cost today. I mean, you could spend $100,000 or $200,000.
Yeah.
Spend on what you want to spend.
It's crazy to think about how it's kind of reversed at this point to where the fur market was high and coons were worth a lot, mm-hmm. while dogs weren't worth much.
Dogs were still cheap. Right.
And now hides are worth next to nothing.
Nothing.
And dogs are high.
But that's what social media, the hunts have done. It's unreal. It's amazing what they've done.
Do you think the hide market crashing, do you think that affected? Do you think that drove more people that might have loved the sport for the sport, but were doing it for the hides? Do you think that changed the dogs?
Oh yeah.
And pushed people towards competition hunting because it was a way to be involved with it still?
It was their only option. I mean, a dog was still going to be worth nothing if he wasn't being able to compete. I mean, that's what pushed and drove the whole deal. Mm-hmm. A lot of there's some of them old men that never got in a competition hunt that had everything to do with all the way these competitions are set up today, because they was the ones, that done that. They set it, the whole pattern for these guys.
So we mentioned your dad earlier. How long's your dad been hunting?
Probably since he was probably 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
Dad hunted. Dad was a hard hunter when he hunted. Now, he was one of those guys. He just did not like summer hunting. He thought it had to be cold when you was hunting, and Dad he was never a guy to kill a lot of coons. His deal was them dogs had to tree them coons without having every one of them. I mean, they had to, because he wasn't going to shoot every coon to no dog. And I kind of growed up with that same deal. I don't kill a lot of coons. People say that when I start a pup, I'll give that pup some coons. You got to, but that pup ain't going to get every coon. I mean, mm-hmm. I'm going to see what his bottom end is like. I don't want to see him on easy everything. I want him to have some tough nights. I want to see if he's going to compete at an early age. Because if he isn't, I'm not going to keep him and push him. Mm-hmm. That's the way I do it.
So what is it really that you look for in a dog these days?
These dogs have to move. I mean, in order to win hunts today, these dogs have got to move. They got, since the very beginning of time, you had to have a dog that would strike a coon, run it, tree it, and have it. And no matter what anybody says, these dogs still have to have coons. A coon dog, you still got to own a coon dog to go win a hunt. It don't matter what the rules say. You can't take a set of rules and a mediocre dog and go to one of these hunts and win. You're not going to do that. You got to have a dog that is very competitive. He's got to do things quicker than the other dog in the cast. He may not be the best dog. The best dog in the cast don't always win, but the dog that puts out the most effort that night gets the second coon treat, and the third coon treat is the dog that takes home the prize. And having that drive, that ability to go do that, it's not everywhere, I tell you. It's not. I raise a lot of pups, and I don't know, 2-3% of them make that kind of a cut that will go on to that. Mm-hmm. A lot of those pups will go tree coons. There's a big difference in a dog that can tree a coon and a coon dog. Mm-hmm. Big difference.
So when you're raising a pup, how do you like to start them? Walk us through that.
Okay, I like to let those pups. I don't let my pups run loose because of where I'm at. I'm on a blacktop road, so I have to do things a little bit different. But I like to turn those pups loose basically every night. Every night that I'm home sitting around here, and I don't do it every night, but every night that I'm around here, I turn those pups loose. I like to see them learn how to go get through fences. There's fences all over my place here, and if they're going to venture out, and I don't want to see that pup out there laying in the yard. I want him moving. I want him up, curious about something. If he see calves out in the field, I want him to look out there and head toward them. Mm-hmm. And that's how I want those pups to start. Then I like to go down, like I'm lucky. I've got a place down here. I'm a half mile from the river. A lot of times I just drive my buggy down there, turn those pups out. I don't walk them. I just sit there and let those pups. Eventually, them pups will start moving out. First thing you know, them pups are running and treeing, and you need to get to them in a hurry. You got to shoot them that coon. But them pups, that's the way I want them to do. If I see laziness in that pup at an early age, probably not going to eat my feed very long. I want a mover, and everybody says, well, these pups should. When you got 3 or 4 pups, they're not going to show independence. They're not just going to be off by themselves. They can't, because those other pups are going. But I want to see that pup that maybe leads that pack out there every time, mm-hmm. even though he ain't by himself. But he's the one that went. That's probably the pup I'm going to probably get my eye on in there and watching. And then once those pups start, pull them away from other dogs, start hunting them, and then they got to go do that by themselves. And it's like I say, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's 10%, 2%. I don't know what the percentage is, because I don't keep track. But those pups have to have that something special in order to make it.
How are you selecting the pups you're starting with?
I don't know. I mean, there's so many things on that. People look for a black toenail. They look for hairs under their chin. I go up and look at that pup. I want that pup to look me straight in the eye and out of that litter. And if, I want a dark eyed, I got in my mind what I like, I have to see all of that, or that's not. I'm not going to pick a pup. I've seen a lot of litters of pups that I would. I don't want to pick one out of there, mm-hmm. and I've seen litters that I probably couldn't have picked one out of. But because they all look good, they all passed everything. That's the hard thing, But there's always that one pup. If you watch those pups, there's always that one pup that just, he's the first one out of the gate. He's the first one to go do something at an early age. It's kind of why I've raised as many shack pups as I have. Shack crossed on the right females. Those pups are not lazy. They may not every one of them make, but a high percentage of them pups for me have made. And, not all of them has made competition dogs, but a lot of them has made dogs that them dogs will go get treed. And they're not just looking to get treed. They're going to have something, they're going to have a coon at an early age. And they start, look how much difference it is now from back when we hunted the grade dogs. Like I said early in this podcast, a year and a half old, they was barely starting. I got a 3.5 months old pup out here right now. If you hung a coon hide up out here, he'll get treed on it. And you can drag it anywhere in this yard, and he's going to find it, and he's going to get treed on it. He's 3.5 months old. But that's the kind of stuff that this deal has changed, Colby, a lot over the years.
You mentioned that coon hide. Do you ever show pups any cage game or mess with drags any? Or
I do.
What?
I do a little bit. I don't turn a lot of coons loose for them because I don't know. I'm not against them running a coon by sight, but I want to see early on. I'm not out here to try to make a coon dog in a week. I want to, I'm going to give him time. These pups get pushed too hard. I think not everybody, but most people expect that pup. They go out here and buy a pup off of a breeder, get the papers in their name, and then a month later they expect they should have a coon dog. And that's not it. That's just not. If that's what you're looking for, we're in the wrong sport, But them pups have to mature, Some pups can do it early, but some of the best pups I've ever seen was the last ones in the litter to actually start. Those pups are the ones that some of these pups at 7 months old are as good as they're ever going to be in their life. That other litter mate pup to him, a brother or a sister, wouldn't even start at 7 months. And then you read about that dog 2 years later, that's the dog that was going on. But that guy give that dog time to mature. I think you have to do that.
Yeah. What would you say the most common mistake you see people make is whenever they're starting a pup?
Over pushing them.
Yeah.
Just what we was talking about. I think if you don't give that pup's mind time to mature, these pups, people buy pups that probably shouldn't buy pups. The pup trainers, you better have a whole pocket full of patience because they're going to try you. They're not for everybody. Most people need, instead of buying a pup, they need to go buy a 4 or 5 year old broke dog and get started coon hunting that way because it's so much easier for them. They're going to go through. It's going to save that pup from all the mistakes. It's going to save them from all the mistakes. Do that because you're going to buy several pups. You're going to have just as much money in it buying puppies as you are buying a broke dog getting started because there's a ton of mistakes that's made. They don't get them pups ready. Even feeding. Look at the feed. I come from days when there wasn't even dog food to now, and you can grow a pup now really too hard. You can grow him so fat that his bones can't stay up, but you can get them big and strong, and I think there's them are all kind of mistakes that people make. We don't let these pups mature. That's, if you was asking me to sum it up, that's what I would say. People don't let them mature.
Yeah.
And they need to mature. And it don't matter if it's in your squirrel dogs, in our coon dogs, if it beagles, it's all that away, And we're blessed with the terrain that we got to hunt around here. Colby is amazing. We can put a dog we can put him in cornfields, let him tree easy coons. When he gets to doing that, we can take him and put him in hills. You can drive 10 miles from my house. You can hunt any kind of country you want to. I'm 3 miles from Missouri. I'm a mile and a half from Kansas, and I'm Oklahoma. And you around here, I can go to Kansas and hunt cornfields and easy coon, or I can take him and go to McDonald County and I can put him in areas he can't tree a coon. It's it's tough. You know, if a dog don't go a mile down there, they're not going to treat very many coons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just you can dry hold a dog down there, and that's what we do when we're getting our dogs ready. I don't go to Kansas to hunt when I'm getting a dog ready. I take him to tough places. I want to see what he's going to do in tough situations.
Yeah.
Because when I pick a hunt, I'm going to pick a place that's probably got coons. So I'm going to make it easy on him, but I'm going to make it easy on him on the scorecard, not when he's pleasure hunting with me.
Mm-hmm.
I want him tough then. You know, the dog that I got right now, Joe, you know, Braxton Wheels. You know Braxton.
Yep.
Braxton's hunting Joe a lot more than I am. You know, I'm getting older, and I don't want to fight it. And he's young. He's got Joe, and we're kind of partnering on him. And he does an amazing job. You know, he hunt that dog. Sometimes he'll walk out of the woods in the daylight, and I'm just going to be honest with you, I can't do that no more. But that dog he's got that kind of drive. Well, now we're starting to pick hunts where we want to take him, and it took a long time. You know, Joe's 4 years old. He's soon to be 5, and it's took all of that time to get that dog to that point. I mean, I really know what it takes, but you know, I didn't want to put forth. You know, I just couldn't do it no more. Trying to work, you know, and everything. It just didn't fit my schedule. And then Braxton has came along, and he's took this dog, and he's winning, and I look for him to win some more. They'll hear about this dog before it's over with, because we got him ready.
Yep.
You know, took time. It took a lot of time to get him there, but we got him there. You know, hopefully he does some good.
Yeah. Well, I had a question lined up. Forgot it in my head. Didn't write it down.
Well, you do that when you put these things on.
Yeah.
Your mind goes blank. No, what a run. I mean, that I've enjoyed hounds, Colby. Like, I mean, I've took it to heart. I absolutely still love to go hear a dog, you know, strike a coon, run it, tree it, walk into that tree, and he's got it. I mean, it's still something that you can't really explain it. It's either in your blood or it ain't. But for me, it's always been it's a passion. It really is. It's a passion. I love it. I love raising pups. You know, there's people that hate pups, you know, and I'm not that guy. I like pups. I like to see what they're doing, and you know, I even enjoy. You know, if you was working your squirrel dogs, I want to go look. I'm that guy. I just want to go look and see what that dog. You know, how your program's going. I'm you know, I want to know about it, and it's always been that way for me. I've just been intrigued with the hound way of life, and the hounds have been a big part of my life, and I hope to continue to do that.
What other type of dogs have you been into? I know you've told me about bird dogs before.
I
think there's some bird dog trophies hanging up over there.
I've won some stuff in the bird dog division. I've had some really good bird dogs, and I love bird dogs. You know, bird dogs and hounds are totally different, have to be fed different. There isn't a better athlete on the face of this earth than a good bird dog. And they're competitive, and you know, I've won some stuff. I've got some trophies back here where I won in 2008 and 2009. I won the Missouri State and in the bird dog deal. Was lucky. Just had a good run. But yes, I've had bird dogs. You know, I've had stock dogs. I've got good stock dogs. I guess you'd say I like dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had them all. But the coon dog has always had my heart. That's where my heart's always been, was the coon dogs. Yep.
So earlier you mentioned hunting off a Farmall.
Yeah.
Surely you've got some more stories about hunting off a Farmall.
Well, that was my only way. Where I grew up was south of Seneca, a little town called Hart. Population was like 5. And there was a little country store there. And I was probably, 12. 10, maybe 12, my dad would let me drive that tractor out there and I'd put gas in it. Well, then I'd come back and we used that on the dairy. I mean, I growed up on a dairy farm and we would use that tractor. Well, that tractor was something I was on all day long. So when it come time to go coon hunting, I thought, but I got to have me a trailer. I got to have some way to haul this dog, because I can't just put him on this tractor. And my cousins Carl and Kevin lived like, I don't know what it would be, 5, 6, 7 miles, from us. Man, it would be any night. You'd see me going down them old gravel roads with that old trailer on the back and that hound tied in it, and I'd go hunting. And that's the way I actually hunted. I hunted. I had my 4 or 5 places I'd go. Dad always knew if I got back in that tractor, he knew I was at one of them places. We didn't have cell phones, we just took off and went. And I would drive over a lot of times, meet my cousins somewhere. They'd start walking this way, and I had that tractor, and I'd drive that tractor and pulling that hound around and go hunting. And that was my only way of getting around. And shoot, it was great. Then later on, Cheyenne Cummins' dad, name was Gary. Gary was a real good family friend. He actually worked for my dad off and on some. He was always around. Gary got his driver's license, and then, man, I got to park that Farmall tractor and get in his truck with him, and we hunted every night. That when it got dark, Gary knew. He didn't call and say, "You want to go hunting?" When it got dark, it was time to go hunting. That's what we done. We went hunting, and Cheyenne growed up that way. Cheyenne growed up with a guy that would hunt every night. Might not hunt the same dog every night, but he'd hunt hard, and it's kind of the way it was,
Yeah.
The good old days, they call them.
Where was the closest coon club if you wanted to go to hunt back then?
Seneca and Anderson.
Yeah.
I lived at Hart, which is south of Seneca, and it was a little closer to Seneca, but not much to Anderson. Anderson had a McDonald County Coon Hunters, and then Seneca Club. Seneca Club's an old club. It's been there a long time.
Still in the same spot it is now?
Same spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and you can go make a platinum champion tonight in one night if you win $100,000 hunt. Back then, you seen very, very few night champion dogs, and you seen very, very few grand night dogs. It took a lot to make a dog into a grand night back then. Things have changed. It's different than it is,
I imagine you probably hunted with the males a fair amount back.
Kevin and Corey was a neighbor.
Yeah.
We
Say they're down around there.
We lived probably, 4 mile, 3 mile apart. Yeah, they hunted. Those boys always had good blue dogs. Their uncle Pete Corey, Pete always kept them. He always had a good coon dog that would tree a coon. Kevin and Corey, and then Corey got into that where he was breeding a lot of good dogs, and they done the same thing the rest of us did. At some point, they had to go to work, and try to make a living, and they're not in it like they was, I'm sure Corey and Kevin both still love to go see what a good dog, does. It's just in your blood.
Yeah. So if you showed up at a hunt back then, what would it look like?
Oh, totally different it is today. There was a lot of old men sitting around. Back then, a hunt was a place to go visit as much as it was, the I don't know how to even put it, but it was just a bunch of guys sitting around visiting. Yes, they had a coon hunt, and them old men would sit there and stay until them dogs all come back in. They wanted to see, what was done that night, and it was just the fellowship of it. That was more of it than, Now you go to a hunt and everybody sets off out by themselves, and and there's a lot of money on the line, and rightfully so. You know, it's changed a lot. You know, I don't know. We look at equipment, Colby. Man, when I was growing up, it was hard to go find a coon. But it seemed to me like we found more coon with carbide lights back in than we do with the highest tech stuff now, and a lot of it was because of the dogs. You know, those dogs wasn't going to tree as many slick trees. You know, not all of them, but I'm talking about the exceptional dogs that I got to hunt with when I was young. The equipment's changed it all. I mean, it's changed everything.
Well, with $40 hides, probably most coons didn't get left in the tree, I imagine.
No, and you wasn't going to walk to a dog with with a chance to shoot a $40 coon out, and him not be there. You know, if that dog was missing him, you probably didn't shoot the coon. You probably shot a little lower. You know, so that's just the way it is.
Yeah. So let's talk about carbide lights a little bit.
Okay.
I've got a few of them that I've recently acquired and have kind of been playing with a little bit.
Believe it or not, they're pretty dang good lights.
Are they?
Yeah. I mean, for the time, don't get me wrong. You walk up to a tree, and the first time you turn it on, you're going to say, you know. But, heck, them coon look at them good, you know, that flickering light. Coon looked at them. And we didn't do as much summer hunting then, too. You got to realize that.
Yeah.
You know, a carbide light's a lot better light in the winter than it is in the summer, a whole bunch. But, no, we found a lot of coon. There's been a lot of coon shot out with carbide light, and that's hard to believe, but they was good. They was dependable. You had a little bag of carbide in your pocket and a jug of water, you could hunt as long as you wanted to hunt. You didn't have to worry about no battery.
About how long? So, like on a normal, like say, I'm holding my hand up, about 2 inch, 2.5, 3 inch by 2.5, 3 inch. The bottom piece.
The smaller carbide lights would burn hour to hour and a half.
And would you fill those up with carbide whenever you
wouldn't fill them plumb full, but you just put a good amount in there, and then how you set your water on them was how much gas it put off to make your light brighter. Well, you know, the lower you kept it, the longer it's going to burn. But if you set them all on medium, but then a lot of people had the big carbide lights. Now, if you had a big carbide light back then, you had something. Now, you're just going to burn more carbide, but you can see a lot better.
Yeah.
And because the reflectors was bigger on them. And we hunted, you know, I probably got to hunt. I was probably 15. I'm going to guess I was probably 15, and I wouldn't have no way of knowing if that's right or wrong, but somewhere around 15 when I got my first battery light. And I remember this, the first time that I went hunting, it was a little 6-volt light. A neighbor of mine built me a case to put it in. I had 2 wires run up on a little headband deal, and I hunted across the road from where I growed up, and I was probably, I don't know, a quarter of a mile from the house in the brushiest dang place you could get. And I'd played with that light too much, and I got back there, and the dog got treed. I didn't have no light. I said, this will never take off. You know, we're going back to the carbide. And I wasn't smart enough to take my carbide light with me. So I didn't get to see if he had that coon, and I walked back in the dark, and I mean, I was pretty skeptical. I carried that carbide light and some carbide for a long time because, I mean, you couldn't keep batteries. A dadgum 6-volt hold in your hand light was the biggest thing you had, you know. I'd love to have some of the equipment that I got today back then, you know. But it wasn't bad, too. You know, it was a good era.
Yeah.
Good time to grow up. Real good time.
What were you running for a gun back then?
An old Remington 22.
Yeah.
An old Remington 22. I'm sure Dad bought it somewhere for nothing, you know. It was beat up, but now that's what, you know, when you're coon hunting, that's what you need. You had to throw it down some. Game warden chasing, you just throwed it in the ditch, you know.
Have a lot of high-speed chases on that Farmall.
Yeah, your getaway probably, you wasn't going to get away. No, but it was fun. You know, it was a lot of fun back then, hunting throughout the years and still today, even though the dogs don't look good, equipment breaks down, whatever, you still got to make it fun. Yeah. If you don't make this fun, you're not doing it right. It needs to be fun. And I think a lot of these young kids that grows up today are so competitive, they forget to have fun and forget why we're out there. You're out there because you're one with Mother Nature. You know, you can go out there and listen to your dog. It's a great way to grow up.
Yeah.
And these kids, just have a little more patience. Let things mature. It'll all happen. It will if you just let it happen. I guess to sum it up, I wish that we could just let these dogs be dogs. I wish everybody would just let a dog be a dog. And just, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to every night. But that, if you look at it right, that's part of the fun. Mm-hmm. Watching that dog overcome that mistake. Maybe he makes it tonight, but next week he don't make that mistake, And if these dogs want to go run junk, these puppies, I don't care what they run. Go learn how to run a track. Mm-hmm. I don't care. Yes, I want to see them fall off and get on some coons. I want to tree coons. That's what I'm out there for. But I guess for the dog, we need to bring it back to where that dog's got a little more importance than a check. Mm-hmm. We need to make that thing. Give them time. These breeders that's all out there now would love to see people take a little more time. They do a lot of work. They travel a lot. They do a lot of work to get these dogs bred, making these crosses. These crosses are made from the West Coast to the East Coast to make that cross. I mean, people had to do a lot. And if they just let these pups grow up and mature, I think we would see a percentage go up tremendous in these dogs, because I think that needs done. And it's all, it ain't something you got to go spend money on. It's just learning, letting that pup have time. And I think we'd see a lot. But that's about, we could sit here all day, but that's probably about what, look at the hunters around here, Colby. We've got we got 3 world champions right here. Mm-hmm. Just within 20 miles of us right here. And, those guys have all, them dogs compete around here on a Saturday night hunt. They're having a doubleheader in Seneca tonight. If you want to go to Seneca, Missouri tonight, I guarantee you can go down there and draw Stogie. Stogie's a world champion dog, and he'll be in a UKC doubleheader tonight.
What's entry on that hunt?
25 or 35. I don't know what they are now, but probably 25, maybe 30. I don't know. But you go down there, you're going to draw them kind of dogs. Back when Lane was hunting Emmy, you could go to Seneca, Missouri. You could draw her right out of that batch on a UKC hunt. It's pretty tough around here. It's not easy. I done another one of these podcasts with Josh Michaelis, and that's what it was. It was a tough place to win. And
I listened to that. That was a good episode.
And it is tough. It's still tough here. Yeah. It's a tough place to raise a pup right here, but if he makes it here, he can make it anywhere. He can go anywhere in the world. That pup can go. You put a pup comes out of my country that's treeing coons consistent and having them. Take him anywhere you want to take him, and he'll get along. He'll get along good. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Vic, I sure appreciate you letting me interview you.
I appreciate what you're doing. These kind of deals, this podcast, how else are people going to know? You're doing a good job.
Thank you.
And keep it up. Go find these. We need to have one. We need to have a podcast sometime of getting 4 or 5 of these guys and sit around these, and just turn it on and let it go. Whichever way it ain't, it'd get pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I would sure let it happen right here. I mean,
I'm going to take you up on that.
Get 4 or 5 guys together and just introduce them and let it go, just like you was at a hunt. That guy's talking about his dog. We're all talking about a different dog, or how good these dogs. Just let it go, whichever direction it goes.
Yeah.
And that'd be a good podcast.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a real good podcast. Yeah. We ought to do it. Let's do it.
We'll get that planned out.
Yeah, let's do that.
No, Vic, thanks, and I really appreciate it.
I do too. I appreciate.
I've enjoyed the conversation.
To do it. No, me too. I have a lot.
Yeah.
Well, until we meet again.
All right. Well, everybody, take care and keep wearing out that boot leather.
Yep, that's right.
I just want to give everyone that's listening a sincere thank you. Getting this podcast going has been a project. I really hope you're enjoying it, and if you don't mind, give the show a good rating and review wherever you're listening to it at, or share it on your social media to help get some traction. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to your feedback.